In this episode, Seth Stover, co-founder and CEO of TideRise Technologies, joins the Serenity Sisters, where he shares how his triple bottom line business grew from an idea into an organization that employs previous orphans from Malawi. What compelled Seth and his business partner to start a business dedicated to transforming Malawi through job creation and sustainable employment?
You specifically asked about my biggest challenges. And so my biggest challenge is opportunity. I said we're an orphanage. We raise orphans and we prepare them for their lives, for all different facets of their lives. And he said it's the most disheartening thing when we watch these aged out orphans literally walk down the driveway and walk back into generational poverty. And so he thought, what if we carve off a small piece of the current outsourcing and bring that, there was literally an empty building on the orphanage, and what if we hired the aged out young adults from the neighboring villages, and let's do a project. Let's start small, but let's do a project and let's see, can they do the work? Is the quality good? Are the unit economics interesting compared to other, outsourcing hubs globally? And most of all, can these people make a living that could be transformative for their lives and their communities?
Seth's journey is serendipitous, and it's fascinating how the dots just seem to connect themselves.
Like it really flowed naturally. There was no big plan. There was no big, I'm going to go have a headhunter find someone. It just beautifully all fell in place. So I think that there comes when you have a values-based opportunity and desire to do right and help others, these things will just fall in place because you're working with the same like-minded values people.
Giving back and building a better future can't just be done with words. Actions are required. This episode brought great learning and inspiration to the Serenity Sisters. You may be building or thinking of building an impact-based business that involves bettering communities and those around you. Growing a business is never an easy journey, but we hope that this episode will bring you some serenity now. Let's take a listen. Welcome to this episode of Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Seth Stover of TideRise. And Seth met Rita, one of their Serenity Sisters. And so this company of TideRise is quite amazing. I'm going to have Seth tell us a little bit more about the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, first off. And I'll tell you a bit about TideRise. So I'll start with sort of the official mission of what we're doing. So we are bringing employment to parts of the world where talent and ambition exist, but opportunity either just doesn't exist or there's very, very little of it. And that's our purpose. There's a whole big story behind why, and we'll get to that. But we're originally focusing on the country of Malawi, again, for various personal reasons. And one layer down from that, specifically, what do? We are connecting these people and communities around the world who often are educated. They have incredible skill and talent. They just don't have any opportunity available to them. And we're connecting them to companies in global markets who I think we're all very aware of the various levels of labor issue that's happening around the world. And in my opinion, it creates this really interesting opportunity to bring those two issues together. There's awesome companies looking for talent and they can't find it. So we're bridging this gap of companies that are looking for talent with people in these corners of the world who have the talent and definitely have the ambition, but have no way of connecting to these companies. And that's TideRise. We're trying to be that connection point.
Awesome. That's fantastic. There's a lot behind the story here. So thanks for trying to make it as simple as possible for us, Seth. Now let's start diving in a little bit deeper. One of the things we always like to understand or find out is, how did this story begin? What prompted this? And that's just a great connection point for all of us. So help us to understand that, Seth.
Yeah. This opportunity came out of the company that I was involved in last. Some of you may or may not know of a shopping app called Flip First, I'll ask that. Are you okay? Okay, good. I got a yes. So that was the last company I was involved in. I joined Flip, which was actually called Wishabi at that point. It was not the best name. And I joined the 4 founders as the second hire in 2009. And I'll give you the very short story on that. We went from the 6 of us to about 550 of us in 8 years. And minus revenue the first year I joined to about 100 million a year when I left in 2017. And amazing. That's a whole other conversation, but it was an absolutely incredible opportunity and very dear to my heart. In 2017, after the company growing at that rate, it was very difficult for me, unbeknownst to me, for me to sort of keep up with that level of growth. In the midst of that, we had our first child. And in 2016, when my wife was out grocery shopping with our 2-year-old at that point, he's 8 now, he looked up to the sky and saw an airplane and said, "Look, Mommy, that's where Daddy lives."
Oh no.
And that was the beginning.
Oh, my heart.
Yeah.
It was like 200 flights a year for 4 years straight. It was far too crazy. So that was the beginning it began with my wife starting to say, like, is this what we want the next 8 years to look like?
That's very gentle of her. That's very gentle of her.
Very gentle. She was very gentle through the whole process, but it just started conversations. And long story short, we got to the point of saying, I think this season needs to come to an end. And so it did. I left in October of 2017. I left still feeling like family is there. And that's a whole story in and of itself as well. And we moved actually out to Kelowna. One of you said Vancouver. Stephanie, I think you said Vancouver. So we moved to Kelowna from Ontario. We were there for about 5 years. In that first year, I took most of that year off, and I kept in very close contact with my boss from Flip, the CEO. His name is Wehuns. It's a very strange name, so Wehuns. And our friendship actually got much deeper, not working directly with each other. And in a catch-up call about a year after I had left, he just randomly asked me this question, "Hey, do you remember what we were doing in Malawi before you left?" And I said, "Yeah, sort of." And so the story there is Wehuns has friends who run an orphanage in southern Malawi. And Wehuns and his wife and kids would go there about every couple of years to visit their friends there. Wehuns wanted his kids to experience that part of the world. On one of those trips, Wehuns out on a walk with Mo. It's Mo and Joanna who run the orphanage from Oakville, Ontario. They're from Oakville, Ontario. On one of those visits, they're out for a walk, and Wehuns asked Mo, "What are your big challenges? Like, what else can we do besides just donating? Like, we donate money all the time, but like, what else can we do? What can we solve?" And Wehuns is very typical entrepreneur, constantly solving problems. And so Mo just sort of chuckled at that, and he said, "Well, you specifically asked about my biggest challenges. And so my biggest challenge is opportunity." He said, "We're an orphanage. We raise orphans and we prepare them for their lives, for all different facets of their lives." And he said, "It's the most disheartening thing when we watch these aged out orphans literally walk down the driveway and walk back into generational poverty." And that sparked something in Wehuns. And I have the benefit of saying this in retrospect now. I think in the moment, Wehuns was just responding to probably just his gut saying, we have to do something about this. Not that like, there's a great idea behind this. It was just, I have to help with this. And his thought was, at that point, we had 500 people in our Toronto office, and we also outsourced to between 500 and 700 people in India and the Philippines. And so he thought, what if we carve off a small piece of the current outsourcing and bring that? There was literally an empty building on the orphanage. And what if we hired the aged out young adults from the neighboring villages, and let's do a project. Let's start small, but let's do a project and let's see, can they do the work? Is the quality good? Are the unit economics interesting compared to other, outsourcing hubs globally? And most of all, can these people make a living that could be transformative for their lives and their communities? And so that little project, and I remember hearing about it when it was going on, I wasn't involved in that at all. But that little project started with 5 of the aged out young adults working out of that empty building, and it went to 90 over a year later when We Hunt and I are on our phone call. And he on that call said, Seth, there's a model here. Like from each angle, there's a model. Like there is a business efficiency model, operations and financial. There's a huge, which is the sole driver, social impact model. And he said, I want to find a way to scale it. I don't really know. He said, what are your thoughts about building a company around this concept and scaling it? And again, I think it was just responding to my gut of like, yes, if I have the opportunity to be a part of building a business again, whose sole purpose is to be a foundation for people to be able to step up and out of generational poverty, I want to do this. And that was the beginning of TideRise. So, and I think one other thing I'll mention, it, again, in retrospect, looking back, I saw We Hunt through that process, go through the thought process of how can I go beyond just giving my own funds, and how can I actually use our business as a leverage point for good? And that has stuck with me from that point on. This is the first time that I've been involved in a business whose sole purpose is to be a leverage point for good. And yeah, I'm incredibly thankful to be a part of it. So that's the origins of TideRise.
So that's a great foundation. That's a wonderful idea. And obviously the impact must be incredible. My question, I think, is about the funding aspect of it. So you have this great idea, and obviously you guys are experienced in raising funds for the other business. Where did you go with this?
Good question. So we had a couple ideas initially that had some form of Flip potentially investing along with a couple other companies.
So private investment funds. Yeah.
But for various reasons, we decided to not go down that route. And we did a friends and family raise. So We Hunt, as CEO of Flip, had led our series A, B, and C, which was like 3 million, 15 million, 65 million. I was involved in those, just getting all the meetings with the VCs. The first time he ever asked me to help with that, I didn't know what a VC was. So he said, can you get the meetings with VCs? And I'm like, I will. Yes. What's a VC?
Okay. What are they?
It's the right answer, Seth. It's the right answer.
Right.
Yes, I'll get it ready.
But what is it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I learned a lot by just getting those meetings and then being a part of those meetings that We Hunt's led. And so, yeah, I was able to take a little bit of that, and there's 4 of us on the board of TideRise, We Hunt and Matt, 2 of the founders of Flip, who started this concept, and then Brad and myself, my co-founder, and all of our parents invested, aunts and uncles, cousins, friends that I worked with at Flip. But I think you could sort of bucket them all into 2 buckets. One, people who were investing in us as people. It didn't really matter like what we were doing. It's like, yeah, we invest in you, we love you, and we're blinded by our love for you, so we'll invest in you. And then the other side is we have a really strong, this bucket's bigger, group of people that are friends, yes, but had extensive involvement in Malawi for many, many years. And often through charities and mission work and stuff like that. But they got really excited for this very different way of supporting this country that they love. They've been used to donating, and it took them a little bit to wrap their head around, like, we're going to invest in this for-profit company, but its sole purpose is to do what we've been trying to do for a long time, and this is scalable. Like this is interesting. This is really interesting. Yeah. So that was really fun, getting them to the table and seeing the wheels start to turn of excitement for a different model, but still the same objective.
Kind of like you can give someone a fish or you can teach them to fish kind of concept.
So, right? Peggy, I love that you said that, because from the beginning, we added a line to that. So give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach them to fish. Feed them for a lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But then we added the line of, but what if there's no pond to fish in?
Oh,
and that's a country like Malawi, is that you have, and we're seeing this with the people that we're hiring now, you have millions of people coming through the university system. So you have university educated people. So they're being taught how to fish, but with nowhere to fish, it doesn't matter. And that was huge for me. That helped me sort of solidify what we're doing. We got to bring the lake. We got to bring the place where they can fish.
Oh, I think you brought the ocean. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say with a name like Tide, it's more of an ocean.
Yeah,
That's great. I like that. Yeah.
So just a question about, as you're building this, you must have hit a turning point or two in this journey. And so tell us a little bit more about that. Was there a turning point in the organization? Is it after the fundraising? Is it at a particular size of the organization?
There has been multiple turning points. I think the ones that would be most interesting to highlight, obviously getting to the point of profitability was a great turning point because it gave us, we could sort of take a breath for a second and say, hey, we're doing this and we can actually see where it can go. But by far the most important turning point for us was learning from our clients about how much bigger of an opportunity this was than we thought. So when we started, we took, I don't have any experience in outsourcing or the BPO, business process outsourcing world, so I didn't know a lot about this. So the very common tasks that are outsourced globally at a very high volume would be financial things like invoice validation, invoice processing, that kind of thing. So we got involved in that a little bit. Data validation, data entry, we got involved in that. And then one of the bigger growing areas in outsourcing was data labeling and annotation for AI and ML. Mm-hmm. And so we focused heavily there because it was the buzz area and there's a lot of work there. I was just learning about artificial intelligence at that point, and I didn't know that there's millions of people behind these models who are training the models to actually become artificial intelligence. So we focused there and we did good work. We got multiple clients on board. But what ended up happening around that year mark was clients sort of turning around back to us and saying, hey, we really like this model. Like, we like that we're working with this North American leadership team with a really unique and diverse skill set and experience. And I'd like to talk about Cecilia because she's in that group and she's an important part about this. So I'll come back to that. So we get to work with this leadership team, but then our work's being fulfilled in Malawi and we're paying like East Africa rates for this, which is huge cost savings. So they started to think, like, what else can you do? So they would start asking us questions. Hey, do you do Zendesk management for client success? And we would
yes.
Yes. The right answer. It was the right answer.
We actually did say no, but I learned to not say that pretty quickly. We would say no, but let's try. Let's try. And that was the beginning. There was two things that we discovered there. One, companies have a much greater need to globalize their workforces beyond what they typically think about outsourcing. And I know for me, like, there's sort of this, what we typically think about outsourcing, but then there's all these other procedural in nature tasks and work cross-functionally across the organization that is a really good fit for doing somewhere else and providing these efficiencies, and even for retention, because the people in the company get this stuff off of their plate and they're much happier. So we started to understand that there's this huge workforce extension opportunity that gets us integrated very deeply within the organization. At the same time, the other learning was this education part. We started to see the number of university educated people who are in Malawi with nothing to do. So we're just starting to match up, like, oh, well, maybe we could say yes to this finance ask. Like, we had one company who, it was like, we have all these tasks in our finance team and they would be speaking with our CFO, but they don't need like a full finance background, but this would be a huge help. And then we're finding people with finance degrees and accounting degrees, and you get it from there. So that was probably the biggest turning point, both for how we build up the workforce in the country. And that's a whole discussion on focusing on getting educated people employed. Like, that's huge for the nation. And then the value within our clients that we didn't really know we could provide.
And I think even the value of providing opportunities of additional learning for those who are delivering,
Yes.
right? So it's not just a monotonous data entry role that other people don't want to do, but now they're excited because they're working on this project and they're working this type of company. And so it creates things fresh, and it really adds to their ability to really see how they contribute to the success of their businesses. Love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in with a question. You're here in Canada, and I believe the co-founders perhaps are here in Canada as well. So what's your connection with Malawi, and who's the person on the ground supporting you in Malawi? And of course, it's my way of helping you introduce Cecilia.
Yeah, thank you. So at the very beginning, when I had decided that we were going to do this, and I actually called my wife's cousin, who I had seen like a few times at family reunions over 13 years, who I knew was really good at operations and also had this unique love for Africa over many years. And I called him out of the blue. He was wondering why I called, and he ended up being my co-founder. He left his career and joined me. And then when we were starting to plan our first trip to Malawi, I was in a small business leaders group in Kelowna. And one of the ladies that was in that group with me was Laurel Douglas. I don't know if you all know Laurel or not, but
yes.
Laurel just heard like the word Malawi come out of my mouth. And she was like, excuse me, what? And she said, if you're doing anything in Malawi, you need to talk to my friend and COO, Cecilia. So Cecilia and I met briefly after that in Laurel's office. Cecilia was very like arms crossed, tight-lipped. We joke now that I think in her head, she's like, okay, I need to be involved with this just to make sure these guys don't mess it up. Like, because they're going to mess it up. They're going to mess it up if they do it on their own, which is right. And so she, again, long story short there, well, after that meeting, Laurel said, you need to bring Cecilia to your trip to Malawi. And so we did. And on that trip, we said, the elephant in the room here, like, do you want to join us in this? And we are nowhere near where we are today without Cecilia involved. So I should give the background for people listening. Cecilia was born in Malawi. She is Malawian till she was in her mid-20s. She has spent many years here, over 20 years in North America, in Canada, and now she lives in San Francisco. So she is on the ground in North America here, but she is the one who manages our leadership team over there. And Brad's very involved in that as well. So that's the connection point that people said at the beginning, like, you're going to need someone on the ground there to lead it. And we did slowly build up a management team there that is all Malawian, but we never saw it coming where we'd have a Malawian here who understood both cultures so well at the business level. And she's been amazing.
I love some of the pieces that you've been sharing with us about how it started with a phone call. And, I always wonder, Seth, did your wife get mad about you picking up that call again from Wehuns? It's like, stop it. Didn't we already do this? And then the second part is, then you said, okay, let's just do this whole thing all over again. And understanding that you're going to be working again in somewhere far away. And then pulling a team together. And it was all kind of serendipitous. Like, it really flowed naturally. There was no big plan. There was no big, I'm going to go have a headhunter find someone. It just beautifully all fell in place. So I think that there comes with, when you have a values-based opportunity and desire to do right and help others, these things will just fall in place because you're working with the same like-minded values people. And the doors just continue to open because we all want to help and share and say, well, so Laurel and I go back many years as well as Cecilia and I, and they're exactly those types of people. And it sure sounds like you are as well, Seth. So thank you.
I don't need to say any more on that, Rita, because that, like what you just said, is exactly TideRise's journey so far. And I think all I can say is our part is responding to an attraction to that values-based opportunity. Like, this aligns. I have no freaking clue what this is going to look like. I don't know how to do it, but it aligns with these values. And so then let's go. To the question about my wife, yes, I did go back in our house. I took that call in the backyard and all excited. And I told this whole story, and her response was, she was not showing excitement at all. Her response was, so you're telling me that you want to start a business fully on your own this time, like be a founder, you want to do it halfway around the world, traveling again, and you want to do it with We Hunts. And she knows how close We Hunts and I were, but also, working with We Hunts brought a lot of intensity, and that was a lot of the beauty that came from my time there. But so, yeah, she was not thrilled at what that could look like, and she does love it at this point.
That's great.
Sometimes triggered by, a few of the just typical startup founder things that we're doing this again. But yeah, she loves where it's going.
So on that note, why don't you tell us, where is it going? Like, do you have a vision forward, or are you still doing the let's see where it goes kind of thing? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say both, to be honest.
Good.
I think, I don't think we can ever give up that, like, we can't over-engineer this. So there's that part. We can't over-engineer this, but that has to be in tension with still running a good business and being intentional and having a plan and executing against the plan. And so I would say that I know as a team and me personally, I am having fun with that. Like I like being able to sort of discover that tension of having both. So on the plan side, we're going to continue to focus on Malawi indefinitely. Again, there has been opportunities so far, but I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity at some point where it's like, yeah, we should bring this model to this country because of these reasons. Mm-hmm. But we're not rushing that at all. In fact, we've said no multiple times. There is by far enough need in Malawi for employment, and for both the social and the business efficiency reasons, we really want to just focus and do good work and scale it where we are. So that would be one part. And then we'll still continue to focus in the AI space, especially because of what's going on. We're not hanging our hat there because of how fast that changes. I would say we're definitely hanging our hat more on this workforce extension model of integrating deeply within companies and being, I didn't share this. One of the best compliments we've had from a COO of one of our clients so far was, you guys have become like our secret scaling sauce. Like we look at scaling differently when we know we have TideRise there. And that helped me. Like we want to be a scaling partner. That becomes really interesting if done well. So that would be a few points on how we're looking forward.
That's amazing.
All right. Well, I love the story behind what you're doing, and we are ready for our quick fire. And so I'm going to actually kick it off, and we'll go around and we'll end with you, Seth. But the quick fire for some of our new listeners is a way for us to either express what resonated with us in this episode, or it could be tapping on something that we thought, I forgot to say that. And so here's an opportunity for me to mention it. And so for me, I think you are a true example of trusting in the flow of entrepreneurship. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs don't trust that when you put something out there into the universe, as quickly as, something like, I just need a break from this intense multinational business and how quickly it's growing, to there's something that I think I can do that really adds further value to the world than just making profit and making revenues. Trusting into that journey, your journey, which is unique for everyone, is so important. So I just thought I would highlight that because I really see it in you being guided by the universe, and with the partners that have come across into your life, and the fact that you related to somebody who, now you're partnered with. I think there's a reason that we are in each other's lives and we cross each other's paths. And I think the fact that you were able to trust in that is taking this business to this next level. So congratulations. With that, I'm going to choose someone different. Candace, you tell me what you think.
You know what? I just have a comment to make. I'm so inspired by what you've done. Like the wanting to do good and turning it into a business that still does good is just amazing to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more things about your business in the future.
Thank you.
I'm actually thinking that it's a win-win-win. We hear often that the best deals in business is where everybody loses a little bit. But in this case, I, they say that with deals, right? Everybody comes out hurting a little bit. It's a good deal. But in this case, what I'm seeing is it's a win for the businesses. It's a win for the people. It's a win for the economy of the country. And, in the end, it's a win for all those involved because it's such a good feeling to help, I think.
Yep, agreed. Thank you.
I'm just going to kind of share how this story started was, number one, we Huns had to ask a question. So sometimes as we go through business and in life, we are just doing things. And like you said, Seth, earlier, is that you're donating or someone's giving, but there was nothing else. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing to do that. But somebody had actually asked the question, what else can I help you with? What is the challenge? So that step one, sometimes maybe we can each think of something that we can do and ask a colleague, a friend, a partner, anything, and start asking that question now. The second thing is Mo, that was on the walk with We Huns, could have just said, we're good. Thank you for your help. But he actually answered with, here's my challenge. So when people ask you, so if I ask you, Steph or Peggy or Candace or Seth, what can I help you with? Answer the question and be truthful or be vulnerable and say, hey, this is my concern. This is my issue. And it broke my heart when you told me how they walk them down the driveway. It just broke me. And as these orphans age out. And then the third thing is, okay, so we had the question, we had an answer, but then we issued a challenge. And good. I'm so glad We Huns called you, Seth. I'm so happy that you actually picked up the phone. I'm so happy you took it in the backyard away from your wife. Yes. But look at what happened. And I still don't think that we have the true impact of what actually is happening and the ripple effect around the world and all the people that this has touched and the families and the lives of all these people that you've supported. And it's not just our people in Malawi, but it's our people here in Canada and around the world, all your clients, as well as the team members within TideRise. I can't say enough, echoing what everyone else is saying. You've inspired us. You've, made us think, make us want to ask more questions, but also if someone asks for, can I help you? Answer. And you never know what might happen. And then the final piece is when you do the right thing, you don't have to have the whole thing planned out.
Yes.
You're doing the right thing, and the same type of people and the values, they will all come together at the right time. Maybe not exactly when you want them or how you want them to show up, but they will all be there for you. So I think it's just an incredible, inspiring story and journey. And this is actually your life. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you.
Yeah. Seth, finish it off. Tell us, something resonated, or is there anything else that you'd love to add? We'd love to hear more.
I think one thing that I thought about a couple of times throughout this is thank you guys for taking the time and using this medium to do what you do. That's pretty fantastic. I love it. And this is a lot of fun. So you guys are also really good at what you do. So thank you for that. I think the one thing I'll share is just a couple quick stories of some of our team members. That's probably a good way to let's make it personal to finish things off. So I'll just share one. His name is Salos. He was a part of our first 15 people that we hired. They were all high school grads. A very common thing in Malawi for families who often have 5 or 6 children is the parents have to pick one that they'll be able to educate because they only have the means to maybe do one. And Salos was one of those siblings that had the privilege of getting educated. And we fast forward 4 years now, and he was just out of high school in one of the poorest countries in the world. And he is doing incredible work. If I could show you the different tasks for multiple companies in Canada, US, Europe, and delivering incredible quality work. He has his own home. His grandparents live with him, and he's paying for the education of 2 of his siblings.
Oh, all right.
Wow.
Amazing.
So that's the kind of
that's
the ripple effect of that is amazing.
Exactly. And
the tears are gushing now, Seth.
Well, it's and I think that the reason I wanted to say that is that's not a TideRise thing. That is TideRise being the connection point, but that is because of also a company, a client who is saying, yeah, we're going to do this. And because of that decision as a business to do that, Salos has transformative experiences within his life. And so, yeah, I'll leave. There's multiple more of those, but we'll leave with that story.
Yeah. Might have to just bring you back on at some point, Seth, because I'm sure the audience, like us, it just wants to dive in even further on so many different levels.
Would love to. Yeah.
So with that, it's so amazing to have met you, Seth, and to hear the stories of your organization and all the good that you're doing in Malawi. And so we are excited to share this with our listeners and wanted to thank you so much for being on this episode of Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur you know some serenity now.